Lately, we've been having a discussion on how we prove our cases, especially when we are conducting forensic investigations. And in this discussion today, I'm joined by one of our forensic investigators. Her name is Nikki Ochieng. Nikki has been very instrumental in most of our investigations. She has participated in quite a number of assignments. Nikki, I remember just 2 months ago, we were with you in Burundi.
Yes.
For about 18 days, doing an investigation in one of the leading banks there. And I think the thing we keep on discussing as a team is usually, how do we prove our cases? Yeah, and I remember that our policy internally is usually at that first call by the client, when the client reaches out to us to say that they suspect that fraud has happened in the organization. I think the first conversation or the first engagement we have with them is normally to test whether predication exists in the first place before we get into that particular engagement. And I think we define predication as the totality of circumstances that would make a professionally trained, reasonable person to conclude that fraud has occurred, fraud is occurring, or fraud will occur. And then once we confirm that predication exists, then we now start the preliminary engagements towards getting into an investigation. So Nikki, based on your experience on the cases we have handled, the investigations we have done, how do we prove our cases?
So when it comes to proving our cases, first of all, we must establish a prima facie case. This means, just as you've said, we must at the very start indicate that there is indeed a case to answer, and this is where evidence comes in. So evidence on its own is classified into two. We have direct evidence, which speaks on its own, and we have circumstantial evidence, which would mean having inferences. For example, for fraud, we would need misstatement in the financial statements, such and such. And in addition to that, we now reclassify these two according to the nature of each. So then we have four categories, which is physical evidence, which is also called real evidence. For example, weapons, fingerprints, such and such. We then have the documentary evidence, which we now collect when we go to the field. This could be cancelled checks, interfered with bank statements, and all that. We have the testimonial evidence, which is given orally, could be through an interview, or a claim made by someone orally and recorded. And then now we have the demonstrative evidence, which just explains that could be diagrams, charts, and graphs to show what is actually happening. And all these, in their different forms, now help us to prove a case.
So Nikki, as a follow-up to the first question, I'm sure you are aware that all cases require submission of the best evidence. So according to you, what is the best evidence?
Okay, when it comes to investigations, the best evidence does not necessarily refer to the most appropriate evidence. Instead, it would mean in proving a particular claim, the best evidence would be that which is original. Although in some cases it may be unavailable, the offering party should prove that one, it is actually not available, and two, that the offering copy is reliable and accurate.
After the best evidence has been submitted and our investigative team has analyzed that evidence, then the next thing we do is to determine the strength and weakness of a case. So how do we determine the strength and weakness of a case?
Okay, so when it comes to that, we rely on the inferences drawn from the evidence. This would mean that the evidence provided must connect point A to point B. Look at it like a puzzle. One piece on its own does not say much, but when you put together all the pieces, it fits and it becomes a full picture. So in the same way, evidence provided must be able to flow and to come together in a way that it makes sense and is logical. For example, in forensic audit, we would look at large unexplained withdrawals from an account, and for this evidence to be strong, it would mean we have to link it to actual missing funds in the company's accounts. If this can be done, then we have a strong case. If not, then there's no basis for this case. So what I would say is the strength or weakness of a case is not determined by the volume of evidence provided. Instead, it is determined by the story this evidence provided tells. It has to be logical, reliable, and to flow.
Thank you so much, Nikki, for your insights on this very sensitive topic to us as investigators, and all the best as you continue investigating cases and fighting fraud.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.